are things that we are looking at comprehensively in the budget and also going forward.
Okay. I will come to you, Deputy Minister Anthony G. Myers, Fiscal Affairs. Let's look at the fiscal aspect of the economy. You want to bring us up to speed with, what did you see and what is being done going forward?
Okay, thank you very much. Firstly, if you look at the budget from the year-on-year comparison, 692 is much lower than the 771 or 710 or whichever numbers, because the number from the previous fiscal year, they are not, we don't have a singular number to count on. It is 710 or is it 7 or 76 or is it 796? So the Comptroller and Accounting General, at some appropriate time, he will give us the true numbers, because there were some issues with respect to financing of the budget that were not captured through the appropriate system. We will discuss that. But notwithstanding, if you look at the numbers that has to do with actual performance on domestic revenue, this budget, the 2024 budget, has significant improvement over the past year's budget, because the only area in this budget that is lower than the last is international resources, other grants and borrowing. So, for example, if you look at our tax revenue, compared to 2023 actual, we have 523.5 million in tax revenue. In this budget, we are projecting 540. That is what? That is 17 million more. And then non-tax revenue, those ones have to do with fees like vehicle registration and other court funds and administrative related fees. In the last budget, the actual performance was 82.7. In this budget, we are projecting 109.7 million. So what this means is that this government intends to stand on its own feet. While we will, in the future, try to solicit resources from external partners, either through borrowing or through grants and other means of inflows, this government intends to try and stand on its own feet, meaning to make use of the domestic resources that are available, the potential for the economy. My colleague just told you about kicking up or restarting the economy, because tax and other form of revenue are a function of economic performance. The better your economy performs, especially in real growth, not nominal terms. Nominal growth is where you just looking at the prices, which can be influenced by inflation and other exchange rate factors. Real growth is where there are actual productivity. Farms are producing agricultural products. Manufacturers are putting out things from their factory. Services are booming. That is real growth. And those are the functions of the economy.
And that was lacking in the past?
Well, we all was here. I mean, you've been here for a while. You know what was the issue with the economy in terms of all of the incentives that are needed to drive the economy. They were lacking. He referred to energy, for example, and also the absence of sustained policies for various sectors, policies for agriculture, policies for manufacturing, policies for the service sector. More or less, businesses were striving on their own. There were no specific government-led effort to stimulate growth in these other sectors. That is a discussion for another day. But for the purpose of this budget and the purpose of this conversation, what we can say is that in order...
You want to take it? Yeah. Again? Okay. Great.
Okay. So in order to attract external support, you must first demonstrate that you are able to sustain yourself. A typical example is when these international organizations, be it NGOs, so when they come, what do they say? Okay, we want to help you, we want to do this project for you, But what are you able to
You,
contribute
you
for
have to
yourself?
match their investment.
Match their investment.
Okay, what I want us to do is to simplify some of the economic terms, for the layman. Coming to the budget, and the Deputy Minister for Budget, Madam Tanya Bromson, is here. What can you say about the budget? Because this government was given the opportunity to align its development plans with the budget. This is why it delayed. Now the draft national budget, the draft budget. What can you say about it in the most simplest term? Is it a development budget or a budget just to service government?
Good morning and thank you. Well, to start off, the budget for this year does not reflect all of the ambition of the arrest agenda.
Okay.
The arrest agenda will be part of our national development plan, which will be done during this year. We've already made arrangements and we're already having conversations around that strategy to develop the new plan. But this plan addresses some of the 100 days deliverables as stated in the arrest agenda. We have managed to capture a lot of the activities that were proposed, but when we look at some of the activities proposed, they were already part of the agency's activities, so we didn't want to double dip. For example, in the health sector, one of the activities was making drugs available. We already have a line in the health budget for that activity, so we didn't duplicate that. But we managed to capture most of the activities that are presented by the implementing institutions. The budget for 2024 in terms of activities, in terms of the expenditure side, we have non-financial budget asset that comprise about $51.89 million. Recurrent is 645.93. The development budget is what we categorize that as PSIP, Public Sector Investment Programs, and recurrent are those activities that occur on a regular basis for institutions. So on the recurrent side, we have the compensation leading at about 297 million. Goods and services, which is used to operationalize institutions, is about 85 million. Subsidies, that's to institutions that government supports, about 2 million. And grants for government-owned institutions that will also support about 106.7 million. Social benefits like pension and other stuff, that's about 17.9 million. Non-financial assets, for example, purchase of vehicles for other activities that are not recurrent. Domestic liability, which is a primary expenditure for us, is the first claim on the budget.
It's about debt.
Yeah, debt.
Okay.
So debt is divided into two components. You have domestic and you have external. Domestic is what we owe to our local people, and the external from external partners also. The domestic liabilities is about 69 million, and foreign is about 59 million. So
when you put all together, the budget is in the tune of how much?
692,483,000 US dollars.
That is below the 2022 or 2023 budget. Yeah.
Yes, it is below that. We try to be practical in this stance. We are looking at revenue sources that we are sure that we come through, instead of putting in numbers that will not be realized, and then we end up having a shortfall.
Okay. It's good to understand. I mean, so of all the projection, Minister Topo, I mean, what can you say? The economy, can this budget, withstand the economy?
Yes, that's what I said earlier, that we we're trying to be very practical to go to what our real growth is
Mhm.
and how best to sustain the real growth without taking into consideration expectation from the broad or whatever feasibility that we need as a country. But the good news here is that this budget, you have 93% of it coming from the domestic revenue. So the borrowing you see here is less than 10%. That's the first thing that you got to understand. One reason there is that we reach a stage or reach a level as a country that we could not pay our debt. We could not even pay a salary to public servant and almost to domestic commercial banks.
Mhm.
That the check will be bouncing, and you realize that just people were living in euphoria. Oh, this will spending on this, and in the end, you are not generating that, but your expenditure became almost like a last share of the activities of budgetary expenditure. And you realize that I will tell you this, maybe we'll go deeper.
Mhm.
The 2023 budget is quite interesting to know that that budget was revised 3 times. It's
But
just
the number is
changing.
bigger. No, the
Number
number, the total amount
yes,
is bigger than this year.
yes, it's bigger than this year. But what I'm just letting you know is that even the first number they gave, they couldn't make it. They adjusted it. They went back and adjusted it. So if you check the outturn, you realize that you checking my technician looking at that, you realize that one budget fiscal year got 3 different numbers. So that's why we say instead of us living in euphoria, instead of just thinking that, oh, this is I can do it this way, let's be very realistic and see how much cash we have, how much we can generate, that we can spend it to a productive area that can have return on investment. These are the decisions that went into the budget process. Besides that,
Mhm.
one of the things that we have is that from my side, in terms of the Department of Economic Management, issue of debt is very much important, right?
Mhm.
So your obligation is like you live in a house, you are in the property. The first thing you always need to do to pay your rent. So you run a business. If you have you take loan from the bank, you always want to make sure that you pay the bank first. But that's not the case in the past.
Mhm.
So what we've done now, imagine people feel okay. We've taken almost like 18% debt to revenue ratio, which is very high. We're taking a raise because one,
Mhm.
to unlock some of our expenditure, we have World Bank a lot of millions of dollars here over right now on the books. We all have almost 400 million that's supposed to be coming from World Bank, our on the money that had not been spent because we've been under sanction for not paying our debt to them. We're paying our servicing our debt. You got African Development Bank, you got AU, you got ECOWAS, almost all of our partners. It's like you need to reach out to your neighbors. When you owe your neighbor, what normally happens to you, you close your door, you be inside, you can't get outside.
Mhm.
They'll be looking for you. Where's my neighbor? That's the reason why we said no. In a simple term, let me say it this way. It's better for you to pay your neighbor's debt. You pay whoever you owe, then you can live freely. And these are some of the decisions. It's a tough decision that we are making as a government. Because many Liberians will not believe it. If we go into detail how much we owe from 2018 to 2023, Liberia debt increased from 800 million to 2.3 billion. But we can't see the physical thing that we can do with it. So all we need to do now is to go back, sit down on the drawing board, do it better. The next thing on this budget that is very much important for you to understand is that we are spending on education, agriculture, and health.
Yeah, I see there are
Yeah.
increments
Yes.
in some key areas.
Yes.
That essentially characterize the arrest agenda of the government.
Yeah.
Say, for example, Ministry of Education was increased from 98 million to 105 million. And other increments taking place at institutions like UL. But agriculture, for example, I was struck to see that agriculture increased 4 to 5 million, 1 million difference. And agriculture is the first of the development, acronym of the government, agriculture, the IRS agriculture.
Thank you.
Why is 5 million? I thought it's
That's,
a
that's
small
a
it's a
that's
small
a
amount.
that's a good observation. There's one thing I want to say to Liberian people. Agriculture, for in terms of the spending to agriculture budget, is not only about what comes from government. That's why you need to be doing some of the public financial management. So agriculture currently, we are reviewing most of the funding to agriculture. And
You mean external support, right?
extended support. There are
Okay.
more funding that go to agriculture. All we need to do is we analyze what we call counterpart funding.
Okay.
If the partner is supposed to bring like $2 million and they say you need $500 from you, we appropriate that in our area as a counterpart funding to make up so that we can go ahead and spend the money. Instead of you sitting down and just putting number in without doing analysis, and the relationship in the spending is one thing. Besides that, when it comes to agriculture, is not.
But this number,
Mhm.
this number, your critics will say that you've given the how you've hacked the agriculture. You say it's the beacon of development, all that. You giving 5 million?
But
It is a
so,
basis for criticism. Yeah.
So let me come in there, right?
Mhm.
Agriculture is a primary production sector, right?
Mhm.
If farmers need, for example, fertilizer, it's fertilizer, whether it comes from external partners or it comes from government. If farmers need tools, it is tools. There is no differentiation whether government provides or external partners provide. So if you look at the amount of external resources that is going into agriculture, and you at LBS here have also been following all of the different projects that are undergoing in agriculture, we took that into consideration.
Mhm.
And then we decided what are the gaps. The gaps are usually, in this case, will be on the human resource end. Technical staff that the ministry and other entities in the sector will need to feed out there. Those staff will need financing, that is wages and other things. So what we are doing this time around, instead of donors going and operating in silos, running operations that are not coordinated.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the current minister for agriculture was also the chair for the arrest platform.
Okay.
And speaking to your humble servant, was his co-chair. So we know what we are doing here.
Okay.
So what is going on is aligning, ensuring that the activities that donors or other partners carry on are aligned with what the government has decided to do. So, like the Honorable Deputy Minister for Budget pointed out, in order not to duplicate, you have to properly utilize the resources. And trust me, as she mentioned, when we develop the National Development Plan for the next 5 years, funding to agriculture is going to dramatically increase.
Okay.
And government will be ramping up, will be increasing its support to the sector, as well as donors also increasing their support. In fact, the other day, for example, or one of the external sources or partners in the agriculture sector, they came to us saying that they were developing an agriculture sector development plan. We say that's fine and good, but let's be sure that that national development plan is in alignment with the overall national development plan that we are going to be developing, as the DMB mentioned.
Okay.
And the agriculture minister is in line with us on this. In fact, he told us that he has actually advised all external partners to make sure that they should first see the framework for the national development plan, so that they can begin to align their own development strategy accordingly. So yes, on paper, you will just see $1 million increment, which of course is a positive. But at the same time, if you consider the overall inflow into the sector from all sources,
Yeah, because
you will see that. And mark you, some of the resources that donors are spending is part of the 2.3 billion debt that my colleague mentioned. So yeah, so these are public funds as well, because we sign these loans in order for the projects to come and be undertaken. So whether it is money spent by the donors, which are loans that we have contracted, or resources coming from the government budget, as you see with the 5 million, is still public resources flowing into the sector.
I think the solution to that is to reduce partner spending and increase government spending by increasing the budget. But let me come to Minister Bromson. I know the disadvantage of this whole, for this particular budget, this 2024 draft budget, is that the resources that form the budget, that form the draft budget, it was not this government that formed the resources. You didn't develop the budget. I think what you did essentially is to align your development plan to this budget. Is that fair to say?
Well, the previous administration submitted a budget to the legislature before the end of the year.
Yeah.
But that budget was returned, and this administration revisited. So the revenue that the budget is comprised of was determined by this administration based on analysis, based on projections that were sound. So that's why you see reflected in the budget as the revenue component.
Okay.
And just to be sure, if you recall, the last budget, the draft budget that was returned by the legislature, has 625 million.
Okay.
So the fact that we are talking about 692.
Okay.
So you can imagine
the increment
that was made based on all of our assumptions and our analysis, as my two colleagues I mentioned indicated, to ensure that yes, there were potential for increment, provided you tighten your policy assumptions around taxation, non-tax revenue, and other sources of. Take, for example, in external resources, the last draft budget I only around 2 million. This one is saying 42. In taxes, non-tax, and all the other kinds, if you go at the detail, if you compare it with the budget that was returned by the legislature, the 625 million, we made assumptions and research, thorough research by our analysts, our Revenue and Tax Policy Division, working with our colleagues from LRA, so that all of the lands were increased over the last 2 months before the budget was submitted.
In addition to that, you also see that there are some variance from the past budget a little bit. Let's say the wage bill. It was around 307. We look at it from the first 2 month wage bill analysis, we brought it down to 297. That means that there were other information that we needed to verify to make sure whether can we sustain this wage bill. We realize that from what we gathered so far, you cannot, and therefore we got to cut on that to spread that to productive area that will be able to spur growth.
That's one of the criticisms of this draft national budget. Your critics are saying you didn't increase civil servant salary in this budget.
This is a very good question. Civil servant salary increment is something that almost everyone, I will not even bet being a presidential appointee, I would tell anyone that I won't feel very good if I go to work every day and come back home and I cannot pay my own rent. Therefore, it's very much important. But how do we address the issue? The first thing there is that we want to be very realistic with ourselves. The increment that was done in the budget, it was not increment done by increasing civil servant salary. It was recruiting more people, putting people on a payroll, which of course some people are not even in government, but they are on payroll. So you don't want to continue that because you needed transparency for those people, taxpayer money to work for them. So we couldn't keep that anymore. And as we go along, from now to July, let's see how it looks at real people who go to work, how much they make and how much they are.
So the personnel audit will
inform our decision to see now there's a need for us to do a civil servant increment. That's some of the thing that there.
Madam Bromson, I mean, you've been at the finance ministry for You know, you are you're one of the successful public servants to stay at the ministry. Is this budget one of the most difficult budgets you've ever worked on,
Very,
given the transition and
very.
you know, people being put on uh government payroll, last minute of time rush, and all these skimmages that that makes the budget even more difficult.
Yeah, it's been very challenging, and you see compensation and debt. Those are the first claims on the budget.
Hmm.
It's been very challenging trying to meet those obligations. And I welcome the idea from the incoming administration to do an audit.
Okay.
I think it's very necessary so that we can ensure that the right people are being paid for the services they provide. However, what is key that Minister Myers alluded to is not just people coming to work, but they need to be productive.
Hmm.
And they can't be productive if you don't have provide the implements for them to do so. And I think that's where one of the major challenges is. And that's what's very difficult during the preparation of this budget, finding money for goods and services which enable people to do work.
Yes.
Yeah, before you come there, Minister Myers, should civil servants excuse you for this particular budget and look forward to their salaries being increased in the incoming budgets years to come?
Okay. This government, the party that leads this government is a party of salary increment from 2006 to 2018. You know what salaries were. So if there's any other institution that the public looks to for civil servants to have a decent, livable wage, it will be this administration. And I can tell you this. I joined the budget process in 2006. I was a civil servant then. I know what was my salary. And I know what it was before we left in 2018. But like my colleague Zuo mentioned, right? If you want to run water or electricity in a home, you first have to make sure that the plumbing system, the pipes are not leaking. You want to make sure that there is no shock circuit in the building. Institutions are writing us on a daily basis, telling us that there are people on their payroll who have no association with those institutions. We will keep that confidential for now because the Civil Service Agency and the Controller Accounting General are already working on that. So salary increment must be made for people who are actually working
And productive.
and productive. People who actually report to work, either in the central offices in Monrovia or in regional offices that ministries and agencies operate around the country. And some of the civil servants themselves know that there are people who are quote unquote their fellow workers who are not actually workers, who are not turning up for work. So salary increment is definitely an option for this government because we as economists, we know that the actual growth of the economy comes from people having money to spend, right? I can tell you a story from years back, right? I have a friend that was selling DK to Major Market. So once in a while, I will go there at certain time of the month to buy stuff for my children. So on one occasion, I went there and I asked her, I said, oh, why is the place so quiet? And she or colleague said, oh, we're waiting for government to start paying. That was the time we should start paying from the 21st to the end of the month. So we can see that the pay cycle is important indicator, it's an important stimulus for economic growth. So if we want to raise more revenue, if we want for businesses to restart, if we want for those stores on Ken Johnson Road to open again, those stores on Benson Street to reopen again, so that people can start going back to China to bring in containers, we have to make sure that civil servants have money to spend. The take-home pay can actually take people home. The spending power of the people, because all other income earners, these big corporations, they repatriate most of their income. It is the workers who spend the money in the economy. But again, like my colleague said, we must make sure that the wage that we pay is sustainable, meaning something that we can or sustain. We don't have to borrow money out of from the central bank, from the IMF and the World Bank to be paying our workers. It's like you as a family person crediting from your neighbors to feed your family. We want the government to be able to earn the resources that it uses to pay its workers. And civil servants, we were once like you. We were all of us around here. We started our government career as civil servants. We know what it means. We can promise you that definitely salary increment is a hallmark of the Unity Party administration in the past, and it will be the hallmark of this other administration.
Minister Bromson, I was, as I said earlier, I was struck when I saw the number for agriculture, but I was also amazed when I saw the reductions at some of the areas where, the citizens have complained about. For example, the Ministry of State budget was reduced in this draft. National budget was reduced from 20 million to 9 million. The Office of the President reduced from 4.4 to 2.2. The Vice President's budget reduced from 4 million to 2 million. The legislature reduced from 67 to 38. Pro tem budget reduced from 4 million to 1.2 million. Speaker's budget reduced from 2.2 to 1.6 million. And Deputy Speaker's budget reduced from 1 million to a little over 515,000. Where did these proceeds from these reductions go?
They went into various institutions. During the preparation of the budget, we do a recurrent cost analysis, looking at expenditures that recur annually. And there were some expenditures that were one time only. So those were not carried over. So that's why you see some of the differences in some of the ministries and agencies. In the legislature, they had a line there that they wanted to use for the community development project. So that was transferred to LACE, who will implement those projects on their behalf. That's why you see that big gap too in the budget. But most of the money went to different institutions that were in need.
Did they meet the acquiescence of this, especially the legislature, where the draft budget has gone to? Will you be surprised when you see increment in their budget?
You mean after having sent it to them?
Yeah.
Well, they have appropriation power, so I can't say whether I will be surprised or not, but we send them what we thought was efficient, and they have to deliberate, and they will do the needful and send it back to us.
Any of you here have advice for them?
Yes. Let me say this. On the other side, people think that there is a iron wall or some stone wall between the executive and the legislature. That, for example, that instruments of the budget, we just prepare it and climb over the wall and hand it on the other side. No, there are always continuous conversation as we work on the budget. Just as we are in consultation with ministries and agencies in the executive, we are also in consultation with our other branches of government, like the legislature, for example. And especially this legislature is very dynamic. If you can read the profile of the members on both sides, there are people with vast experience in financial management. Some are economists, some are former finance minister, some are former accountants.
So in essence, there were consultations.
There were consultations with leadership. So, for example, she mentioned the issue of the reactivation of the Liberia Agency for Community Empowerment.
Yeah.
That agency was created by government to be a joint institution that it executes projects for both the legislature and the executive. The central government ministries.
It was happening in the past.
Yes, but interestingly now, in this government administration, whereas up to 2018, both the legislators and the presidency will entrust lists with their projects, it became presidential project only.
Okay.
So the legislators were very...
So legislative projects now will be implemented by lists.
At least, because you know why? Even the lawmakers themselves, they want transparency. because when LACE is implementing project, it had to go through the procurement process. It had to go through all the PFN requirements. Unlike the presidential projects, that they were good projects, we don't want to dismiss them, but the process of bringing them on board, it didn't meet all of the financial management requirements. It didn't meet all of the issues, and that is a discussion for another day. So the lawmakers this time were saying we were lambasted when, for example, we get constituency or visitation, whatever amount for the infamous 30,000 case, right? So this time they want the resources that they want to use for their communities to be handled by LACE.
Yeah, they will only recommend the kind of project.
They will recommend the kind of, and no project will go through all of the PFN requirements.
Okay.
So that is some of the reasons that you see the decrease in some agencies. Again, we don't want to say all of those decreases went to LACE. No. As you yourself pointed out from the beginning, there were increment in health, increment in education, increment in agriculture and other sectors.
Okay. In addition to Minister Bronson and Myers' analysis on the transfer, the good decision, which I'll say is something that we need to admire this government for, is that looking at LACE implementing project for legislators. Besides the issue of abiding by the public financial management law, it brings about community ownership. Because from economic management, we've seen that we acquire debt sometimes when individual own the project and say, oh, representative, this project. If he happen to get a contractor that cannot do the job, in the end, it becomes a debt to the country and the government paying for it. But once the decision is made, and that is for his constituency, and it's taken to the constituency, and they make decision whatever project they want, and they make the decision along with the lawmakers, it becomes government project. And the implementation process, if there's any outstanding, it's still the government responsibility to do it. And then the citizens also feel the impact. It's also part of the decentralization policy.
So it's holistic.
Law. It's holistic.
Okay.
So that local people will feel their taxes working for them, not individual, not working for individual. So these are things that we need to look at, because as we roll out into our new development plan, we'll be looking at the decentralization component. That's what we're doing, fiscal decentralization, so that taxes, revenue sharing scheme, all of these are topics that we're going to be discussing in the future. But the reality there is that execution, budget execution component, how does it impact the local people? These are some of the strategies that we're looking at.
What are the benefits for early passage of this budget? Any of you?
Yes, early passage benefits everybody who have a stake in the budget. For example, communities that expect ministries and agencies to make interventions, whether in education, whether in agriculture, whether in health, in other services like roads and others. The communities are interested in these projects coming online as quickly as possible. And then for us as public financial managers, we are also interested in order to be sure that we balance the accounts properly. Because the state that we are in now, where we are spending on designated lands that are not necessarily assigned to the lands that we are spending on, it will take a little while when the budget is passed for us to reallocate those costs to the appropriate lands. That can cause some accounting issues. So it is in our interest as well. And I'm sure in the case of the president, for example, it is in his interest to be sure that he can begin to give the appropriate directives to his ministers and other heads of agencies to implement those programs that he has outlined in his agenda. It is in our interest, for example, that we can have the resources to begin work immediately on the next 5-year development plan. And also it is in the interest of our international partners who want to support us to ensure that we have the resources readily available, approved by the legislature, that we can make interventions in those areas where we have or joint financing arrangements. Those are just some examples.
Yeah.
And that, besides that, spending, especially in terms of payment of debt and commitment, it also unlock the pool money that are in the pipeline that's supposed to come to the country for the people to benefit from. So it's important that we take that into consideration, besides the spending power of citizens when they get their money in their hands. So we need the legislators to return and see how best they can empower us as a ministry and also as a government to do the people's work.
Uh, I know. I mean, there's some kind of rocket start of the government. We all saw how salaries delayed. Maybe delays in salary payments. The government had to, take some money, 41 million, I call it emergency budget to, to service government at that time. But salaries continue to delay. Are we going to see salaries being paid on time? The frequency of salary payment? Any of you can speak to that?
Yes.
And when do we see civil servants getting their salaries on time, for example?
Okay.
The 28th of I'm a civil servant, so I'm advocating for myself.
So let me give you the good news. This weekend, the staff in the fiscal affairs department, in the budget department, and the controller and accounting general department spend most of their weekend working on the mechanics of ensuring that this week the payment of salary can start rolling out
for the month of March.
Now, speaking to the delays in February, it was not because government didn't have money. It was not because the MFDP didn't make the payments. It was not because money was not in the bank accounts. It was not because the central bank didn't disperse, but it was the same issue of trust. The commercial banks have grown used to the phenomenon, and they were very wary of the phenomenon of civil servant running to the bank when they say, "Oh, there's money in your account," and then no money. They were wary of disbursing salaries on government's confidence, and then the funds doesn't come from the central bank.
So have you been able to rebuild that trust and confidence?
So over the past 2 weeks, the controller and accounting general Honorable Edwin Neti has spent his time going from bank to bank to bank, giving them the assurance that this time, when the central bank say pay, please go ahead and pay. Because what happened was that even the usual 3-day clearing period, right, that banks usually apply, it went beyond the 3 days because the banks were not sure, because they have been used to being, how do I call it now, the colloquial term, they say they have been used to the VLA. The official VLA. Yeah, you go ahead and pay the central bank with
but this is a new government. Why didn't they
again that was
trust?
Listen now, in financial management or any other or area of life, for example, when a certain thing becomes a trend, you don't expect it to change immediately until you see tangible evidence.
Signs of
So the next step will be, after this payroll period is over, the Controller General is going to call all of the operations managers of the various banks and the central bank to sit together and reassure them that this government, when it issues check, it means there is money in the consolidated account. In fact, like the Deputy Minister for Budget mentioned, we live by the principle that salaries and debt are the first claims on the budget. In fact, when we are budgeting, before we begin allocating for any other cost, the first thing we take out is the debt that are due for the year and the salaries that are due for the year. So, in other words, we will tell the people, you central bank, if there is any other institution that should know whether government have money or not, it's the central bank.
Yeah, because
so please give assurance to your colleagues in the commercial banks.
Already civil servant salaries didn't go up in this budget, then it's delayed again.
So it's our trust issue. Once we resolve it,
but I think we need to take calls.
Not just to resolve this issue. I think our first week and our 4th month at Ministry of Finance, that's why we had to meet the commercial banks. This was very bad. Yes, you see, I said our commitment with all commercial banks to the extent that their operation almost got stopped. So to negotiate with them, to build trust, we have to go and negotiate and say, look, you know what we owe you now, we'll pay interest on it. That's why you see in the budget talking about the debt payment.
Oh, okay.
Debt payment, realistically, the commercial bank no longer trust government whether that's security or whatever thing you carry, they feel this is more risky than anything else. So as we go, we make commitment and making a payment to them, it put them in a comfortable position to do business with us. Because realistically, no one will go to a board meeting as a CEO of a bank and telling you that, oh, the last month we made this profit, but we lost by this percent due to outstanding area from government. So these are things that we are working on. We've had successful meeting with the commercial banks, and the issue have been resolved. And going forward, we are quite sure that government check will not be held in people's and be worrying about it. But again, let me say this: I know this controller general is not here, but clearly, from all indication, there are so many checks that were in transit, and so many checks went out there, and people held their check and could not cash it because of lack of money. And these are some of the reasons why you see people are very hesitant. And up to now, we'll be disclosing that in our next appearance, maybe at the Ministry of Information.
And one anecdotal evidence I can give you.
Quickly, because I want us to
in December, late December, and part of January, people will have check in their hands and they go to the bank. And if the former CAG, they didn't call to the teller to say, yes, cash this check, you didn't consider having check in your hand as being paid. So that is how dismal and desperate the situation was.
Okay, you can call us now on 080-514-096, 080-514-096, 77058-1886, and be live this morning. I have Deputy Finance Ministers for Fiscal Affairs, Anthony G. Myers, Deputy Finance Minister for Economic Management, Depu Zuo, and Madam Tanya Bromson, Deputy Finance Minister for Budget. Let's hear from this person. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. What's your name?
This is James Stan. I'm calling from the Queensway end.
Yeah, let's hear you, James.
Yeah, we are grateful for all the analysis the people are making and the interest for our country, because we are in the private sector. We also depend on the civil servant too as well. Just exactly what you were saying. When civil servant are taking pay, it's a lot of, because people coming from here told you they want to buy toothpaste. When they take pay, they will not buy toothpaste. So it decreases the stress on the citizen. Not everybody is supposed to go in government. When I sell my toothpaste soap, teacher come and take their pay on time, they can buy those goods and services and things. Money circulation go on, yeah. So we keep on praying for you guys to really see some money situation. And another thing I want to propose is the UL situation. We need buses on campus, so government should also look on that direction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's hear from this person. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. Morning. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Othello Jiffin, Johnny from Hartford, Maryland County.
Yeah, go ahead, Othello.
Okay, thank you. And let me say good morning to your studio guests. This only discussion, there's the information he gave about agencies or entities getting information about ghost names. But those names are discovered. How will be the found decision on that? Are you going to use those positions, those places that are being discovered, and put in new employees? Or you know, use that money to increase civil servants?
Okay, thank you. Morning. Good morning. Hello. Okay, call us on 080-514-096, 080-514-096, 0770581886. We can take 3 more calls. Good morning. Good morning. Quickly, what's the name?
Good morning, President Varflay Kamara, and let me say good morning to the 3 economists in studio.
Yeah, go ahead quickly.
My name is G. Ganil Jr., and I do join the conversation from Montreal County, District number 3. I listen to the economists. I think these are conversations that our budget experts should always come on the media and enlighten the minds of Liberians about the happenings in their budget. Because today they have enlightened our minds. Like some of us who didn't know more about things that is within our budget our mind have been enlightened, and we are open towards seeing a rigorous project that have been crafted by
Okay.
to the implementation of these brilliant economists institutes.
Okay.
And I think that the project is very real to the issue of the Liberian people. So kudos to them. Thank you
Okay.
that the IRS agenda will succeed and our 100 days delay will be implemented.
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine. What's your name? Go ahead quickly.
Okay, I'm Sylvester Dewayita calling from the post studio of the Kenya.
Yeah, go ahead.
Advisor to the ministers from the Ministry of Finance. You know, there's something that is very darkening us because for then we are being taken on the information have been leading from the finance ministry, that of the central bank and what have you. Because before the outgoing president could leave office, he left 40 million into the account of Liberia for money to be used. And when Baga went to give his inaugural speech, he said 25 million. And now coming down again, the feet down will listen to the central bank, they say 19 million are left in the cupboard. So we want to make things as pleasant to us because they work at the finance ministry. So we understand the main budget that the country is operating on in Baga administration.
Thank you. But I think the GAC did the investigation, the audit, and they've come over with the audit report. We're trying to bring on the auditor general here to talk about that. But let's hear from this person. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. What's your name? Good morning. What's your name? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Quickly. What's your name?
I'm Lawrence Enlomi. I'm calling from Georgia, Uganda country.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I've had issue with the Eco Bank. Yeah, Eco Bank have the habit of paying the Liberty company of the civil service salary. Then after the week plus, before they pay the US company, which is kind of a problem for us. We the civil service.
So you want to know what is responsible for that, right?
Yeah, I want to know what is responsible for that because you want to know.
Yeah, okay. Let's take one more call and go back to our guests. Good morning. Good morning. We can take a call. We can take a call and go back to our guests. If not, and then I'll come back. Oh, let's take this call quickly. Go to our guests. If not, and then I'll come back. Oh, let's take this call quickly. Good morning. Oh, okay. So let me come to you. And I know all of you jotted down some of the concerns. I want to start with you, Minister. Zuo.
Yes. Let me take the first issue from the UL boss and the education system. I want to say thank you to the caller. One of the things we want to say here is that education is very much key, and that's why you have it on the arrest agenda. Besides that, human development is paramount to any growth of the economy. So that's why that this government, the budget is actually 32 million for the University of Liberia, giving them room to ensure that other issues that have been outstanding are taken care of. From the outturn, realistic, the last government appropriated 30 million, and the outturn shows 17 million disbursement. But we are saying district to the University of Liberia that we will ensure that you have 100% of whatever that is given there. Equally so, we want for the investment decision being made because academic institutions need to invest their money into an infrastructure, including transportation, technology, things that will actually bring improvement in the learning outcome for the country. So we will take this into consideration and address it with the university administration.
Okay.
I don't know. Am I taking all of us?
You can share.
Let's share.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the issue of bosses,
Yeah.
it's not only with the UL student and staff, even at the Ministry of Finance. By 2018, that ministry have 10 bosses that used to make 3 trips in the full compass direction, north, east, west, and south of Monrovia between 5 a.m. in the morning to 9 a.m., which is the official start of work. Today, no boss. Some of us here have to even subsidize the daily transportation of our personal staff. It is bad across the government. On many occasions, even before we join government, we go into work, we see our colleagues who are civil servants, we give them leave. You ask them, they say their bosses are down. In some cases, staff used to even contribute to buy fuel in their buses before the buses broke down. So the issue of transportation for civil servants across the board, including university students and lecturers, these are some of the areas that we need to look at. This is why we say the payroll audit. So those are some of the areas where money was being misused.
Okay.
People, whether they exist in real life or not, getting salaries that they don't work for, salaries that should go to providing basic in the transportation for staff. Because you agree, salary is low. So one way to subsidize that is for the staff to go to work and come home on government vehicles. So in that case, they can save the little that they earn instead of spending half of their income for. And somebody talk about
Echo Bank.
What will happen to the savings from ghost names? Yes, the savings from ghost names will go to, in the future, in the next budget cycle, making some minimum increment in salaries beginning 2025, and also investing in other priority areas. The issue of Echo Bank, myself, I'm an Echo Bank account holder. My salary go through Echo Bank. The same thing happened to me last month. The LD component came first, and it took almost a week before the US component. Again, it's an issue of trust. The commercial banks need to rebuild. They need to regain their trust in our payment system. And this we are desperately working on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, very last question. Are we going to see the payment of the WAS fees by the government? Is that policy going to hold?
Okay, for now, once government has not made any statement to the contrary, that policy holds until we have sometime in the future, as part of the development process, have a conversation with all of the sector stakeholders, students, parents, and institutions on, like what my colleague said, what do you want to see? Say, for example, universities. Do you want to go and be sitting down on racks and stools and broken chairs, or you want to walk into a classroom that looks like the LBS studio, for example? Then we all have to do the give and take. So both for WASP and for free tuition, that as those are on the table for future discussion, but for now the policy.
Okay. Madam Tanya Bromson, your parting comments. I will take it as your parting comments initially.
Can I just make a comment on what he just mentioned about the free education and WASI? I think it was a good initiative, but there were no policies designed around those initiatives. So how do you define?
So it's not on the board.
How do you define free education? What does that mean? Somebody stays in school forever and we pay, or are there criteria for being eligible for those benefits? So those are the kind of things that we need to put in place if we're going to continue that. Define exactly what that means. But I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be here today to talk about the budget, and we are very happy with the comments that have come from our citizens regarding the budget. Very soon we'll be taking the budget on the road where we educate citizens more about the budget and the processes. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Well, the Deputy Ministers Anthony G. Myers for Fiscal Affairs, Depo Zuo for Economic Management, and Madam Tanya Bromson, Deputy Finance Minister for Budget, all from the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. Next up, I host the Minister of Youth and Sports, Councillor Jericho Bangalu. My name is Varflay Kamara, and keep listening to the Super Morning Show.